Okay, we are now Namatzav of Mechol Maisecha B'Sefer Nechtovim. So I want to announce that this week's broadcast is being sponsored by the Westbrook family, and there's a lot of yard sites that are relevant to it. So it's liluy nishmas, both the grandparents of the Westbrooks, Shmuel Alexander ben Avrum and Pessel bas Meir Stern, and Moshe ben Avram and Miriam bas Moishe RAPAPORT. They were both killed on Yud Aleph Kislev, Hashem Yinkoim Damam. And it's also liluy nishmas Brenda Westbrook's father, Moishe ben Shmuel Alexander Stern, who was niftar on Yud Ches Kislev. I believe today is Yud Ches Kislev. Is it not? Isn't today Yud Ches Kislev? Which is the exact by B'yoyim yard site. Let me just see. Yeah, today is Yud Ches Kislev, so it's his yard site. So the neshama of Moshe ben Shmuel Alexander should have an aliyah. I believe Yud Ches Kislev is also another big yard site. I believe it's the yard site of the Mizritcha Magid. I believe. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's the yard site of the Mizritcha Magid. Let me just confirm that. 14, 15. Okay, let's see. The 18th day of Kislev. The 18th day of Kislev was the yard site of Avraham ben Rambam, it's the Rambam's son, Rav Baruch of Mezhbish, Rabbi Shmuel Shmelka of Sasev. It's not the Mizritcha Magid. I thought it was the Mizritcha Magid. I thought it was the Mizritcha Magid. No, but I'm wrong. Okay. Gewaltig. It's also the bus of the Rebbe's yard site. Okay, gewaltig. Zog the Heilige Gemara. Good morning, Avraham. Zog the Heilige Gemara.
Morning.
Tanu Rabbanim. Eretz Yisrael nivras techila. Eretz Yisrael was created first. V'chala olam kulay niver lebesayif. And the rest of the world was created with the spare parts. Okay. Shenemar. Ad le'asa eretz v'chutzais Eretz Yisrael. So let's see the pasuk quoted, because we have the luxury of having a Torah Shalom. It says Ad le'asa eretz v'chutzais v'reish afresh tevel. So first Hashem made Eretz Yisrael, and then chutzais, which is the rest of the lands. Eretz Yisrael. So again, let's look at the Bach. Eretz Yisrael. Shoyset Tchila. He changes the order around. So let's just learn it in the order of the Gemara. Eretz Yisrael, Mashkos HaKadosh Baruch Hu Ba'atzmai. Hashem himself, Kivayachol, stands with the watering can, like the woman who loves her flowers and she wants to water them herself with her watering can. So Kivayachol HaKadosh Baruch Hu waters. HaKadosh Baruch Hu waters himself. He waters the Eretz Yisrael himself. Kivayachol, and then and the rest of the world gets watered through a shliach. Shenemar hanoishin motar al pnei aretz, which is referring to Kaviyachal Rebbeinu Shalom himself. V'shalech mayim to v'shalech v'shalech mayim al pnei chutzes. Eretz Yisrael shoyse megishamim. The main rain is served to Eretz Yisrael. V'chol olam kula mitamtzes. And everybody else gets from the leftovers. Rashi says, the leftovers that's left over in the cup, that's left over in the cloud after Eretz Yisrael was irrigated.
Shorish of all the rains is down there.
I think that's what it means. I think that's what it means. Because if you think about it, if let's say there's 5 gallons in the bucket, so like 4.5 gallons to Eretz Yisrael, which would flood it, and then half a gallon for the rest of the world. So it could be, it comes through like we learned. Yeah, like we learned about the end of days, the water will come out of the Even HaShasiyah and it will start irrigating the world. Eretz Yisrael shows at Tchila, Eretz Yisrael drinks first. The rest of the world only drinks lubasayv. Shenemar, it says in the pasuk, Hanosein Motar al Pnei Aretz, and again, then the Shalech Mayim al Pnei Chutzos. So we're learning a lot of information from this one pasuk. Moshe la'adam shemegabel es hagvina. Someone is mixing his cheese. So there's the whey part, and then there's the hard part, the curdling part, and he's mixing it together. So what does he take to retain as the cheese? Noitlas oichel, umenich absoilas, and he leaves the leftover water. So we're compared to the cheese. In other words, Klal Yisrael is the big cheese. We're the focus. We're what the Rebbeinu Shalom wants, and the rest goes to the rest of the world. It comes from Eretz Yisrael. Yeah, if only they would. Amar Mar, Memaskin Hein Ba'avim. We learned earlier a machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, where the water from the world comes from. Rabbi Eliezer says it comes from the Ukainis, it comes from the oceans. Rabbi Yeshua says there's a reservoir in Shemayim. And the Gemara had a kasha. If it comes from the oceans, we know the oceans are full of salt water, yet rain is sweet water. So the Gemara answered, Memaskim Hein Ba'avim. The clouds act as a desalinization plant, and therefore they become sweetened when they're in the clouds. How do we know such a thing, that the clouds act as a desalinization plant? When it says cheshkas mayim is the avei shchakim, the clouds of the heavens. And it says in the different pasuk, cheshras mayim avei shchakim. So Zok Gemara, what you should do is you should combine these two words, and you should put in the chaf of cheshkas and the reish of cheshras into one word. Shakal chaf b'shadei reish b'karabei chesharas. So the avei shchakim are machshir. They fix, they improve the water, and that's how you see in the Torah Merumas that the clouds are able to correct the water. And once again, this always puzzles me. The best way to know that the clouds sweeten the water is because the water is sweet. The Metzias proves it. So somebody once told me that Metzias is not as good of a proof of reality as the Torah. According to Rabbi Yeshua,
scientifically, there is some truth to that, because this it doesn't sweeten them, but it cleanses them. The rays of the sun, all different, the gamma rays, all of what those, they cleanse the water.
So
that
besides taking the salt out, they also cleanse them.
But it doesn't.
The thing is, the reason why it's hard to understand it scientifically is because the salt from the ocean does not evaporate. It's only the water that evaporates. That's what the distilled water is.
That's
right. Technically, by the time the clouds get them, they're already distilled.
That's right.
So it's not like the clouds taking the salt, and otherwise it would rain salt sometimes. The salt stays in the ocean.
I don't know about the sweetening part, but there is a cleansing part that happens in the clouds.
The sun's rays, the UV rays, kill off the germs. Okay. So after Gemara, Rabbi Yeshua, Bahani Krai My Darshbu, according to Rabbi Yeshua, for all the water is from a reservoir of pure water in Shemayim. So what does he do with these psukim? So after Gemara, Savar Law ki ha, the Asher Abdimi Amar, Ami b'Marava. People in Marava say, Nahar Anani, Zehirin Moi. If you have light, not thick, thin clouds, there'll be less water. Chashoich Anani, dark clouds, Shagin Moi. Then there'll be a lot of water. And you really learn that out of Cheshkas Mayim. Rashi says, Chashoich Anani, Sagin Mai. Behind the Cheshkas Mayim. If it's dark, there's water. And Rashi is going to tell us that we really only learn it out of that pasuk, not from Cheshras. When the clouds are weak, thin, then there's less water. Atalamed alvol nahar zeiri. We only learn it from one pasuk, from the Cheshkas Mayim. Since from Cheshkas Mayim, when you have thick clouds, it makes a lot of rainwater. So we could figure out from there that if it's not thick, dark clouds, then there's not a lot of rainwater. And the Cheshras has nothing to do with this Shiloh that we're talking about. And from Cheshras, you learn a whole different thing. Kamoy Hashar, Kamoy Ein Shar Deyoy, Kedosh Abishur Leil. Abishur darshaned earlier that well, I don't remember what Abishur darshaned earlier on Tes Amud Beis. He darshaned something from Cheshras Mayim. Let's see what he darshaned. It says Tes Amud Beis, right? So if we just learned it, I don't know why I don't remember it. I should have remembered it from yesterday. What does he learn from Cheshras Mayim? Cheshras Mayim. Oh, that's right. That the clouds act like a big receptacle that has a lot of holes in it, and it drips out, it rains, it sprinkles the water on the land.
Basically, clouds themselves rise up from the ocean.
Right?
The water in Shemayim fills.
That's right. That's right. Okay, Zok Gemara. Taman Oslo Hodatan. The thing that we're going to quote now, who is the author of that brayso? The Tanya we learned. Meir Hel Yoinim, the upper waters, B'Maimer Hein Tluyim. They're hanging with the Meir. And Rashi says, Einon Nochus Al Shum Dover. They're not resting on any type of physical support. They're just independently supported. They're hanging there, no different than the planets that are suspended in the heavens. Zok Gemara Upeireseyan. Upeireseyan may make. We have to wait for Akiva. Upeireseyan Megisham. Akiva would say that the Rebbe's Maimorim are anchored in solid foundations. They're not just floating in the air. Upeireseyan Megisham, and the pairs of the clouds are Megisham. And Rashi says it comes from Mishum Lishna the Kron Nakarachi. From the pairs of your hands, meaning the clouds, the world will be satisfied. Shenemar, it says, Command Rabbi Yeshua. This would be like Rabbi Yeshua, because Rabbi Yeshua said that the source of all the water are the receptacles, the reservoirs that are up in the Shemayim. Rabbi Eliezer, how Rabbi Eliezer could understand this, where there are no receptacles of water in Shemayim? So he learns, this barrage is not referring to a specific rain cloud, like Rabbi Shua learns. Rather, in general, the whole world is all from the pairs of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu made. All the world only gets, and this goes back to what Dr. Goldar said earlier, the whole world is only getting the leftovers of what Gan Eden is. Shanemar, the Nor Yotzem Eden. The river that comes out of Eden, meaning the source of everything, is Eden. Rashi, similar dover, Shegan Eden Shoshim and Agashamim Tchila. The rain first irrigates and satisfies and saturates Gan Eden. The Nor Yotzem Eden, the overflow from Gan Eden goes to the Gan. Tanami Tamtis base core. If you have a bucket that you're going to use to irrigate an entire base core, there'll always be a little bit left over at the bottom. And the leftover at the bottom is going to be 1/60th of it, and that you can use for a tarkav, which is 1/60th of a base core. And Rashi fears ois. So I'm at the Rashi, about 2 inches down, just below the Mishnah, where Rashi makes the comparison. Rashi fears ois the ratios that we're discussing. So let's learn Rashi inside. Tanim Tamas base core. Klisha mashkin b'meim of base core. Yechoyel lahashkes b'tamtzisoi shir zerias tarkav. Shu echad mishishim b'base core. So usually in the bucket there'll be a little bit of water left over, about 1/60. V'hachanami Rashi fears us. Oilam echad mishishim b'Gan Eden. The world is only 1/60th of the size of Gan Eden. V'dai loy b'tamtus ha'anonim hamashkin esagan. And therefore there's enough rain to satisfy the whole world with just the leftover of the gan, because the Gemara tells us gan lefnei kol olam kuloi ke'eden lagan. I'm sorry, the world is 1/60th of Gan Eden, and therefore it'll be enough. 1/60th would be enough for us, the leftovers.
That's Rashi or that's Rashi quoting somebody? meaning that the world is only 1/60th of Gan Eden.
I'm sure Rashi knows this from a Gemara, but Rashi doesn't specifically tell me where that Gemara is. I can't believe Rashi would make that up.
No, I don't mean to say that. I'm just saying it's hard to understand what that means. 1/60th of Gan Eden, when
It just means there's going to be a lot of space available in Gan Eden. There'll be a lot of open air space there. Won't be congested.
Chaim Tzvi, that's the only thing that bothers you on this daf.
No, but that's a hint that I just gave.
Almost nothing is understandable here.
Yeah,
It doesn't-
on a simply pshat
A
level.
simple, yes.
Okay, Taner Rabban. Eretz Mitzrayim have a dalad mea parsa al dalad mea parsa. Eretz Mitzrayim is 400 parsa by 400 parsa. Who echad mishishim b'kush, and the land of Kush is 60 times that size. The Kush and the land of Kush is echad mishishim b'olam, is 1/60th of the land of the world. The olam in the whole world is echad mishishim began. Oh, I'm sorry, Chaim Tzvi, I should have known this. I prepared this Gemara yesterday. Rashi knew it from the Gemara a second later. You see, I didn't prepare good enough. I should have at least known that Rashi was talking about the Gemara a second later. The olam echad mishishim began, and the whole world is 1/60th of the Gan. The Gan is echad mishishim la'eden, and the Gan, so the Gan Eden are two different things. And Gan is 1/60th of Eden. The Eden echad misamach leGehenim, which means there's going to be a lot more people in Gehenim than the Gan Eden, because Gehenim is 60 times the size of Eden, which is 60 times the size of Gan. Nimsa, kala olam kulai kikisa kter leGehenim. Kum techais, the whole rest of the world is not even 1/60th of Gehenim, so we're barely just a cover of the pot of Gehenim. I guess the limud is that the Gehenim is much bigger. You know, there's a story with a couple of big tzaddikim who went up to Gan Eden, and they come into a big empty hall, and they're tired from a long hard trip, and the waiter throws them some old bread with a little bit of butter, and gegangen. And meanwhile, on the other side of Mechitza is a party going on, just caterers and waiters and clinking and clanking. And they ask, what's on the other side of the Mechitza? They tell them Gehenim. So they said, it doesn't sound right. I mean, we have a little piece of toast in the Gehenim. They have a whole big party there. They don't know, wait. Trying to figure maybe lunch, it'll be a little bit better. Lunch, the same thing. They get some leftover macaroni and cheese. And over there, on the other side, there's staff and waiters. They figure, okay, maybe supper will be better. Supper, they got like leftover chicken from Shabbos, cooked chicken from the soup, and they hear sizzling rib steaks being served next door. So they ask the waiter, "What's going on there? I want to speak to the cook." So they call the cook out and they ask, "What's going on there? We're in a Nathan that this is how we're being served." He says, "Well, you expect me to cook for 3 people?" So because Gehenim is much bigger, there we have a whole staff. So you see students at the Gemara, we're like the Kislev today, we get the leftovers. The Gemara v'yesh Avrum, and there are those who say Gehenim ein lahem shir. Gehenim doesn't have a shir. V'yesh Avrum Eden ein la shir. Eden doesn't have shir. So there's no shir. That's why it's Gan Eden, because there's no shir there. It's gewaltig. Amr Moishe, my dichsiv shoychenes al mayim rabim, resting on a lot of water. Rabbas oitros. Therefore, it has great oitros. So Dr. Gemara is referring to Bavel. Migorim leBavel, shiu oitresel meleyaspar. Why is it that Bavel has such beautiful produce and such beautiful grain? The answer would be because it rests on Mayim Rabim. As Rashi says, what does it mean? Shechenes on Mayim Rabim. So Rashi says, Shemashkin Sadeseyim. There's a lot of water that irrigate the fields well. Why is that? Why is it that Bavel gets a lot of water? The Bavel Amuka Mikala Ratzais. Ukishamim Etaptavim the Yodimisham. Bavel gets the runoff of all the water from all the areas around it because they're in the lowlands. Amar Rav said, Asira Bavel is rich. You know why? The Chastam Mitra. They have great yields of their field, beautiful grain, even though it doesn't rain there. And that's the same svar as we said before. It's because they get the runoff. So the soil gets wet and irrigated, even though there's no actual rain falling above it. Amar Abaye, B'tinan Tuvani v'lo Yubshani. It's much better to be in a lowland where it's muddy because then you'll always have proper irrigation rather than it should be a dry land where if it doesn't rain, then you're not going to have any payers. Unless you're building a house. So we're talking about for growing of pears. For growing of pears, you need to have nice muddy soil. Zok to Gemara Vayter. When do we start saying Vsein Tal Umatar? I'm happy. What? So I'm happy that Victor's here because I'm going to need a little bit of help with some of the signs. So Zok to Gemara. Begimel b'mar Cheshvan, on the third day of Cheshvan, that's when you say Vsein Tal Umatar. On the seventh day of Cheshvan. And what's significant about the seventh day of Cheshvan? Tes Vav Yom Acher Achag. It's 15 days after Sukkot. And why do we need 15 days, which is 2 weeks? So the last of the stragglers who are leaving Eretz Yisrael, who are leaving the Aliyah L'Regel, will reach Nahar Pras. Let's see Rashi. Which is Tesva of Achar Chag. Why? Before the water gets to Nahar Pras, which is further. So we want to make sure that people will get home when it's dry. Zok to Gemara, and this is in Eretz Yisrael. Omar Belazar, Halacha Rabbi Gamliel. The halacha is like Rabbi Gamliel. Tanya, we learned Chanan Yomer Ubegoyla, but not in Eretz Yisrael. In the Goyla, in the diaspora, which is relevant to us, this is where we get to us, at Shishim B'Tkufa, until 60 days in the Tkufa. So before we go by, let's finish the sugi and then we'll get into the science. Any fact Gemara, the Bami name is Shmuel. They asked Shmuel, "Me'emes mat kirinon Vsein Tal Umatar." When do we start asking for rain? Amalu, he said, when they start bringing in their wood that were drying in the fields, their firewood, when they bring it in to the storage house that belonged to a fellow whose name was Tavas Rishpa. His name was Tavas, and Rishpa, he was a Tayede Oifes. He was a fellow who trapped birds. Maybe 60 days of the Tkufa is when people used to bring the wood in, so it's not a steer. The Gemara had a shayla. Yom Shishim, exactly day 60. Is it Kalafnei Shishim? Is that a day where you don't say Vsein Tal Umatar? Or Shishim, or you start already saying Vsein Tal Umatar on the 60th day? Toshma, Rav said, Yom Shishim Kalachar Shishim. So on day 60, you already say Vsein Tal Umatar. Well, Shmuel Amar and Shmuel said, Yom Shishim Kalafnei Shishim, you do not yet say Vsein Tal Umatar. So there's a discrepancy, it seems, of 1 day. Amar Rab Nachman Yitzchak, the Simona, how are you going to know who says what? Rav lived higher up, so he needed water. So therefore he said Yom Shishim Kalachar Shishim, because he wanted already to start davening for water earlier. But Tasai, Shmuel lived in the lowlands, they don't need rain as fast, so Shmuel said you start saying the next day. Amar Papa,
to when they say it, based on their needs.
Sorry?
So every little area could say it differently based on their needs. Like
not anymore, but I guess in those days when they were still deciding when to say it, I guess they had their halachas. So Rashi says all the way at the end of our Rashi is v'chein anu hagin shekol minagenu acher b'nei Bavel. We actually follow Shmuel and we hold Yom Shishim. Sorry, we hold Yom Shishim. We don't say. We say the day after Yom Shishim, I believe. Let's see what Rashi says. The water always gathers in the lowlands, in the valley. So you know Rav was in Eretz Yisrael. That's why he said you should start already asking for rain a day earlier. And therefore, and we do like him.
Says the rest of Chutzlar is like bubble that's so irrigated that we can wait
1 day.
Yeah,
right.
Whatever.
So as far as the dates are concerned, I'm not 100% clear because we start saying Vsein Tal Umatar this year. I think it's December 4th. but sometimes it's the 5th and sometimes it's the 6th. And the reason for it is that the 60 days after the season, if I'm not mistaken, October the 7th or 8th, I believe, is the beginning of the winter season, and at the beginning of September is the fall season. So the reason why it differs by us on the English date, even though the Tkufa doesn't change, is because the date of the beginning of the winter, which is dependent on the solar, changes a little bit. And the reason why it changes is because the solar year isn't exactly 365 days. And every couple of years, there's a leap year, which is a February 29th, but that doesn't fix it. It's still off. And therefore, I think every 200 years, they miss a leap year, I think, or they add a leap year every 200 years. So I think in 2400 they're going to add, and in 2000 and 1800 every couple of hundred years there's some type of change made in the English
Also,
calendar.
if the year, there's something about it being divisible by something. It's not, because we didn't do it last time. We didn't skip it last time.
But I do know that even the English calendar, they make every 200 years they make a small adjustment, and that impacts what day the season changes, and that's why by us it's somewhere between December 4th and December 6th, depending on if it's a leap year or if it's one of those makeup years.
But if the year is divisible by 100 and not divisible by 400, the leap year is skipped. So the year 2000 was a leap year, but the year 1700, 1800, and 1900 were not leap years. The next time a leap year,
even though they were supposed to be. Like how often is there a leap year?
They're not divisible. If the year is divisible by 100 but not divisible by 400, the leap year is skipped.
But I know there's something that occurs every couple of hundred years. What happens every 400 years? Right.
400 years.
What happens every 400 years? What is the event? Do we skip a leap year or we add a leap year?
Now, if the year starting the new century is not divisible by 400,
right,
then the leap year is skipped. Right. So 1700, right, is not divisible by 400. 1800 is not divisible by 400. 1900 is not divisible by 400 evenly. So they are skipped.
Right. So that changes the English calendar a little bit, and that would impact when we start saying Vsein Tal Umatar.
I thought that the December 4th and 5th thing is just because of the leap year. If it's a leap year.
Yeah, but the leap year is also impacted by your formula.
Yeah, so that only happens, every few hundred years that you have this problem.
We'll see in 280 years.
That's Hashem Yisbarach. We'll see in 280 years. That's right. So normally, how often is there an English leap year?
There's a leap year every 4 years.
Every 4 years, unless it has a problem of not being divisible.
Unless
on a century year.
Only on a century.
If it's on a century year, that's not divisible by 400.
Correct.
All right, so that slight change throws off when the Tkufa starts. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we have a Gabel clubs, the Vsein Tal Umatar. So I say Vsein Tal Umatar the same time every year, in the Gabel clubs.
Whatever the Ezra's Torah Luach says, that's what you do.
That's right. I'm one step removed from that. I follow the hand of the Gabel.
All we are at the same time of the year. He does it when the guy puts in the wood.
That's right. That's right. Masnisa. So look at the Mishnah. What happens if plan A doesn't work out? Higia Yud Zayin B'Mar Cheshvan. The 17th day of Cheshvan arrived. V'lo yordu g'shamim. And it didn't rain. Now we have trouble. Eschilu hayechidin, the yechidin, and we'll see who those are. Misanin Gimel Taanis. They fast a series of 3 Taanis. Oichlin v'shoishin mishechashecha. They fast by day, but they're allowed to eat at night. Umutarin b'malacha. They're allowed to work. Over rechitza and bathing. Over sicha and shmiring. Over nilas and sandal. Over tash v'shamid. Zok Rashi. Higish Abazar. Oichlin v'shoishin mishechashecha. Shen oichlin b'joim Yom Kippur v'Tisha B'Av. They don't eat during the day like Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av, but by night it's not like Yom Kippur and Tisha B'Av. The Girish Chodesh Kislev yardu g'shavim. What if the situation got worse and we're already at Rosh Chodesh Kislev and it still hasn't rained? Then everybody has to fast. It has the same rules as the Taanis that we discussed a moment ago for the Yechidim, Umutarim b'malacha, u'v'rechitza, u'v'sicha, u'v'ninas hasadu, u'v'tashva shemit. In fact, man Yechidim, who are these very special people who have the privilege of fasting? Amar Rabhuna, Rabbanon, it means the Rabbanon. Amar Rabhuna said, Yechidim misanin shloisha tainiyos, and it's sheni v'chamishi v'sheni. They start on a Monday, then they have on Thursday, and then they have Monday again. In fact, the more my kamash malon. Why do I need a chiddush to tell us that it's Monday first, then Thursday, and then Monday? Tanina, we learned a brisa. Ein goyzun taanis al tzibur b'tchila b'chamishi. You never start the series of fasts on a Thursday. Why? Shaloi lafkiyas hasha'arim. It's going to cause prices to go up. How does fasting on a Thursday cause prices to go up? Zok Rashi, because what's going to happen is on Thursday night, after people haven't eaten all day, they're going to run Thursday night to buy food for Thursday night to break their fast with, and they're also going to be buying for Shabbos. So the merchants are going to think, hey, demand doubled for food. Something's going on, and it's going to jack up the prices. So therefore, if you start fasting on a Thursday, they'll already know that the reason why people are coming to buy a lot of food Thursday night, because they knew there was a fast on Monday already, they already had a heads up that there's going to be a temporary demand on food, but nothing that would cause the prices to go up. So we already know that. So why do I need Reb Huna to tell us that the fast starts on a Monday? Zok the Gemara, Ela shalosh taanis harishonos sheni v'chamish sheni. Why did he need to tell you that? Mao detei mahani mili tzibur. Sure, if the Taanis tzibur, then there'll be a rush on food. Aval yochid, but if you have a couple of yichidim fasting and they come to buy a lot of food Thursday night, that might not create a problem. Maybe you don't need to worry about it. Why? Kamash malon, that we don't even want those yichidim fasting because we don't even want to create any possibility that prices should go up. So you see, Chazal were so busy trying to avoid inflation, unlike governments today who would have no problem contributing to inflation. Tanya Namihachi. That's right. It wasn't bluff.
They couldn't manipulate the curve.
Tanya Namihachi. When the Yechidim begin to fast, misanin sheni v'chamishi v'sheni, but umafsikin b'rosh chadashim. So Rashi says, "Shem chol rosh chodesh b'sheni v'chamishi la'achar sheschilu l'sanos." If one of the days that would have been in the 3-day sequence was Rosh Chodesh, they would pause. They wouldn't fast that day. And ubiyomim koivim haksuvim the Megillah's times. They also would not fast on the days there were Megillah's times. And of course, there's a shayla if this is before the Beis Hamikdash was charb, after the Beis Hamikdash was charb, because we had a whole machlokes if Megillah's times was bought or not. Taner Rabbanan. Al yomer adam talmudani. A person shouldn't say that I'm a Talmud. Any royal liyas yachid, and I'm not royal to be a yachid. So Rashi says, any chashav kol kach yichidim. I'm not such a chashav guy. I'm allowed to eat. Any royal lahaskal times and yichidim. You look at me like I'm some type of rob. I'm a regular guy. I'm allowed to eat. I don't have to fast. Rather, l'kol talmidei chachamim yichidim. Any talmud chacham is considered a yachid. So anybody who is a talmud chacham is considered a yachid. And Tosfos goes into what a talmud is. Anybody who can answer a shaila that I'll ask him on anything, that person is considered somebody who has to fast. Ezo yachid, vezo talmud, and it's mashma, like we just learned that we want to know who's a yachid, who's a talmud, but we learned just now that even a talmud has to fast. Yachid calls a royal Moishe, Taanis al Umatar. A yachid is someone who's so chashav he's royal to be appointed as a leader. Talmud calls a shoyel noiset v'alacha b'limudoi Someone who, no matter where you ask him, even if it's Masechta Kala, which is something that's not normally learned, it's just a side limud, if he even knows that, that's considered a Talmud. Tanar Rabbanan. Loy kol writes a lasas asmi yachid oisa or Talmud oisa. Not everybody who wants to be a yachid can parava that he's a yachid, and not everybody who wants to make himself into a Talmud can parava that he's a Talmud. So you shouldn't automatically fast. If you're a Meir, if Yosy, I mean, no, oisa. Even if you're not royal, you could do it. So Meir held you shouldn't. Rashi tells us why, because it's migasei ruach. It's like you're showing off. I'm from the choshev we mentioned. That's why I have to fast. Rabbi Yosy says it's not a problem. Fasting isn't something that it's not sitting over noon. Fasting isn't something that brings you covet. Fasting is a tsar, and therefore that will allow you to still to the Talmidim, to the Yechidim. It's not a thing of covet. Tanya do chilul a different brayso. Loy kol writes a lot says atzma yochid oiser or Talmud oiser. Divir Reb Shimon ben Elazar. Shimon gam liluy Meir. Lamed devar mamurim b'davar shel shvach. Yeah, if it's a question of sitting over noon by a chasna or sitting at the front of the shul, yeah, there you shouldn't make yourself into a Talmud chacham. B'davar shel tsar, but when you're fasting to help Klal Yisrael, oiser b'zocher latoiv shein shvach hu loy el tsar hu loy. Taner Rabbanan. Mishoyim esana latzar. If somebody was fasting because he had a tzara, well, Avraham and Baruch Hashem, the tzara went away. Sorry, or he was fasting because there was someone who was sick and he wanted him to have a refuah in this rapper, and he had a refuah. So the halacha is a raise him misanu mash. You can't say, okay, you got better, I'm going to break my fast. Tzara went away, I'll break my fast. I found the parking spot. I don't need you, Hashem, anymore. No, you have to continue your fast. Rashi says, "Al chaylev in the shrabba, kuadin and mesa chaylev." Chas v'shalom on the other side, if the chaylev died, and you were ready a couple of times, boil like human Israel. Well, I'll tell you, Rabba, misanu mahashim, you still have to finish off your kindness. V'mlav, because if you don't, Miriam can mask the mekoina. It's like you're making a deal with Hashem. Im tavor. Asana, like you're telling Hashem, if you give me what I want, I'll give you what you want. It doesn't work that way.
Turn a pigeon if the people didn't get better when they gave him a pigeon.
Is that Rebbe? Really? Wow. So he give you a money back guarantee. Oh wow. So what happens if in his city you're above everyone has to fast? Well, in his city, the Rabbanan were not going to have to fast, but he went to a city where they were going to fast. He has to fast with the tzibur that he joined. What if in his city they were fasting and you went to a place where they don't fast? You still have to finish your fast. Rashi says, he has to fast and he has to accept on himself the churmis of the makom that he left. And Tosha speaks out, it doesn't matter whether his intention is to go back or not. Regardless, he has to take on the chumrah of the place that he went and the chumrah of the place that he left.
He has to be there.
What
when
happens
it
if
started, right?
What?
He has to be there when it started.
I guess so. So what happens if so what if he broke his fast by mistake? If he broke his fast anyway, so he's not fasting anymore. So Al Yisra with Tzibur, he shouldn't hang out with everybody else who are starving to death. And he walks around all jolly because he's all comfortable. And he shouldn't say, Rashi says, listen, I broke my fast anyway, I might as well continue eating anyway. That you shouldn't do. I guess not. Shenemar, Yaakov Levanov. This is very interesting. Yaakov told his sons when he sent them down to Mitzrayim to get food, I didn't even know that they had food. Amram Yaakov Levanov. Al tiru atzmechem kishatem sveim. Don't, even though we have food, don't act that way because nobody around you has food. You have plenty of chitim. You shouldn't act that way. The only reason why they went down to Mitzrayim to get food is because they didn't want to look different than the neighbors. So this rois, the Esav, so you everybody around them were starving to death. I didn't know that Yaakov didn't have a hunger. Yaakov had plenty of food. He just went because he didn't want to look to his neighbors that he was fine. So I'll tell you, so they shouldn't be angry at you. When Shimon was in prison. So you think then he ran out?
They said they waited.
I hear.
They told him. They told Yaakov, you don't want to go. They told him, you don't want to go now.
Yeah, Nechami. We could have been. Okay.
The children spoke among themselves, saying, "You know what? Let's just wait. And by the time when Yaakov doesn't have his farina anymore, he'll tell us to go back down and take care of it."
Okay. Then Yaakov told them as well, "Al tirgezu b'darach. Don't be tirgez. Don't get into a fight in the pasuk on the way." Yosef told this to his brothers when they went back to their father. Altis asku bidvar halacha. You shouldn't tumen on learning shematirgezu aleichem haderech, which Rashi says you might get lost. Tosfos brings a medrash that says that al tigzu b'derech means al tafsiku bidvar halacha. Don't stop shmuzing and learning. In fact, tomorrow, Aini, is that so? Amar Eliyahu bar Brachya. Eliyahu bar Brachya said that you have to shmuz and learn. Shnei talmidei chachamim shemahalchem derech. The ain b'neim divrei Torah really serve, but eish they're worthy of being burnt. The Rashi sticks in the serve eish. Shenemar, it says, "V'yehi hema halchim v'daber v'hine rechev eish v'susei eish." You have freedom ben shneim. So Rashi says, "Chsiv hine susei eish u'chsiv ahu inyana halach v'daber." V'haki chsiv lashminyan dilav shoyhalchid v'im kishal lacha lo yitzaylam. The pasuk tells us that they were schmoozing and learning to tell us that had they not been schmoozing and learning, they would have gotten burnt from the fire of the Roich Ve'esh and the Susei Yesh. So Adrabah, how could you say Al Tigru Zubadorach? How could Yosef tell his brothers not to learn? To the contrary, they should schmooze and learn. Dr. Malak Kasha, Halamigris Halayune, Lamigris Rasha is Miboyle Borcha. You have to talk about different halacha on the way. But something that's very teeth that requires a tremendous amount of focus, that's not appropriate because you can get lost. We learned in the Braisa. What does it mean? Rashi says, "My al tikkun b'darach" means al taziku atzmechem b'psiyagasa. Don't hurt yourselves by taking large steps. That's A. And B is v'hichnisu chamol ha'ir. Make sure to end your travels for the day when it's still light. They didn't have street lamps in those days. I don't think this applies nowadays. So make sure to turn down for the day when it's still light. Okay. The Amar Mar Psiyagasa tell us Psiyagasa takes away 1/500th of a person's eyes. And Tosfos asks, if that's the case, so if you do 500 times Psiyagasa, you're blind. So Tosfos answers about it not. Each time you lose 1/500th of what was remaining. So therefore, the first time you lose 1/500th of your full eyesight. The second time you don't lose 1/500th of your full eyesight. You lose 1/500th of what's remaining. It's just like that a Mavaka Choyla takes away 1/60th of a Choyla. If that's the case, all you need to do is get 60 people to come visit a guy and you take care of. The teretz is because every person only takes 1/60th of what's remaining.
I knew the kasha, but I didn't know the places was doing that kasha. That's strange.
Yep. Okay. And you should come in to the city when it's still light. A person should go out when it's chitoy, which Rashi tells us is when it's light. So chitoy is referring to light. And you should turn down for the day when it's the light. Rashi's be'erev ba'oicha chamazay rachas, when there's still sunlight. She'ein listim etzuyin, when there's light, when the sun's still shining, there aren't so many gangsters. Inami shelo yipel be'boyesh u'bekoyim shabir. You shouldn't fall into the different cisterns that might be in the city. You shouldn't fall into someone's backyard swimming pool. if it's dark. Another reason is if you come in clandestinely when it's dark, people will accuse you of being a robber. And then and I believe this pasuk is talking about the this is talking about it's in Bereshit. What does anyone know what this pasuk is talking about?
Yes. Is that they got up in the brothers got up in the morning after they were with Yosef and they went
to
home.
Go back.
Yeah.
So you see, they went by day.
And we use this or larba, so this word or is the beginning of psachim, and that's how they determine what the word or means, or they're trying to anyway.
Right, yeah. Amar Bida Marachia. Halach b'derech. If someone is traveling, al yoichel yoshem mishnei rabbi. Don't eat more than you would eat in a hungry year. In other words, eat very light. The amar lakaman shetzarech laharav atzmai b'shnei rabbi. You have to eat very light on the hungry year. My timer. Hacha targumu mishum ma'yana. Here they said because of ma'yana. And Rashi shelo yischalchalu me'av shalodam v'roi v'achilasoi mipnei terech haderech. The last thing you want while you're traveling is to have to run. So therefore, you should eat very light because walking after you eat is going to cause reactions. You may have shalom shoich ben zelazek in ma'im. That's where the Miriam means his stomach is bubbling around over there. It's not good. It's because you have to save your food so that you'll have later on. You're on the trip. You don't know when your next rest area is, so you have to make sure you have food with you. My benai, what's the difference between these two reasons why you should eat light when you travel? If you're in a field, if you're in a boat, so then you still have to save your food. So you shouldn't eat too much because you might run out of food. But you don't have to worry about getting diarrhea and having an upset stomach because you're not walking. You're sitting on your seat. Yeah. Inami or if you're traveling in a very populated area on the thruway, so every 30 miles you have a rest area, so you can always get food. You don't have a problem. But there's still the issue that if you eat too much, it's going to cause your stomach to be upset, and it's going to cause you a lot of problems in your traveling. Okay, let's stop here. Have a wonderful one.
Check on the state of the rest facilities on the thruway before you have lunch.
Sorry, can you say that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking of yesterday's Gemara. You have to check the facilities on the thruway.
That's right. So it's not only for the food; it's also for the mayana as well.